Alright, it is the end of July of 2021, and I just ran some astrology on some of the precious metals, especially the platinum to gold ratio, because I want to think about when I want to start trading some of the platinum that I have back for gold. And the way astrology works is as follows. So if you look at the price of gold or the price of platinum going back to 1970, what you'll mostly see is inflation, right? Both of them have gone up, but that's because the value of the currency that you're measuring it in has gone down, right? The US dollar, the euro has gone down, even the Japanese yen has gone down. I'm kind of excited to see what the Olympics will bring, because if it brings volatility to the Japanese yen, I'm looking to buy Japan made 100,000 yen coin back in 1986, and if the Olympics shake up the economy and causes the Japanese yen to crash, I hope to buy a few of them. But that remains to be seen. My thrust is still going to be in platinum for reasons that I'll explain in this video. So historically, the blue line is what the platinum to gold ratio has been since 1971. When it was decoupled. Now, markets tend to move in cycles, and a lot of those cycles are governed by astrology. So the moon phases will affect human behavior, the annual cycle will affect human behavior, and even the planets, right? And we can map those out as cycles with different lengths. So a year has 365.242189 days. That's why we have leap years and all that, right? So every 365.242189 times that the Earth rotates once on its axis, it goes around the sun in one orbit. We call that a tropical year. But there are other ways to measure the year, believe it or not. So every 411.78 days or so, we have a full moon cycle year, which means that we have a super moon or a micro moon every so often. And then every 346.62 days, we have what's called a draconic year. This is where lunar eclipses and solar eclipses tend to repeat their cycles. Now, how many days are there in a month? That's a tricky one. The moon goes around the Earth every 27.32 days. We see the lunar phases every 29.5 days. Why? Because after 27.3 days, the moon has gone around the Earth, but the Earth has also gone an arc around the sun, right? About 1/12. And it takes about 2.5 more days for the moon to get into the same angle as the sun. So both of those cycles could potentially affect human behavior, right? Now, lately, the moon has been on the news lately because of what's called the apsidal precession and the nodal precession. This takes place every 18 or so years. And apparently, this time around, it's going to cause tidal fluctuations and cause a lot of weather disruptions. So obviously, that can affect the market. If something's powerful enough to affect the weather, you bet it's going to affect human behavior and what people have to do, right, in the economy. Now, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn all orbit the Sun at different rates, right? Mars takes about 686.971 days. But how often do we see Mars in the same position in the sky? Well, as Mars is orbiting the Sun, so is the Earth, right? So it actually takes a different number of days. Now, for something like Saturn, which takes about 30 years to go around the Sun, how often do we see it in the same position, like opposition to the sun? Well, it's a little bit more than 365 days, right? Because after we go around the sun once, Saturn has moved a little bit, so it takes about 12 extra days, right? So the opposition of Saturn is about 2 weeks later every year than the previous year. For Jupiter, it's about a month later from one year to the next. Okay, so presumably the market goes up and down for each of these cycles, right? Every year. So precious metals tend to be weakest in June, right? I just did a lot of loading up for June, and I every year it's a great time to load up, which is nice because my work is also pretty seasonal, and I tend to make a lot in the months leading up to June. So it's nice, and plus tax refunds and all that. it's nice that the precious metals tend to dip in June. I've noticed from my own experience, I'll have to see if the data bears it out, but precious metals tend to be a little bit lower during the full moon. I mean, I view the night sky a lot, so I happen to make that observation that I'm always scrambling to buy precious metals just around the time that I'm viewing the full moon. I'll have to see if the data bears that out. There might be a daily cycle as well. I don't do intraday trading, but I have noticed that statistically I tend to buy a lot of precious metals during the weekends. I'll have to see if my data bears that out. I haven't really paid attention to the planets. I didn't include Uranus and Neptune because Uranus goes around the sun every 84 years, and we haven't been off the gold standard for 84 years yet, and hopefully we won't be, so there's not enough data for that. Same thing with Neptune, although next year Mars and Neptune comes into conjunction, and I'll have to see how the market reacts to that. So the idea is to fit sine and cosine waves on top of the ratio with the periods corresponding to these astrological periods. Or we got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 17 different periods, right? Potentially, if you have good intraday data, you could have the 1 day and the 1 week period. I'll leave that as an exercise to my readers. And when you're ready, that orange line is the best fit. We're looking for coefficients that match those sine and cosine waves to the blue line. And look at that. Astrology claims that platinum should go to 2x gold. What I love about this is that after I included the last 2 months of data, I did this prediction 2 months ago, it pushed out how late this will be by a year or two, which is nice because it gives me more time to buy during this time. I'll let you think about when you'll start making the trade. I'll probably start trading my platinum for gold when it's 1.5 and average it out, right? So we got at least a good 5 to 7 years to trade platinum for gold at a 1.5 to 2 ratio. I'll probably average it out during this 7-year period. Not to mention I'll have more money to invest, or hopefully I won't be retired by this point yet, and I'll be dollar cost averaging into gold and platinum cost averaging my trading of platinum into gold. I'll have to see the tax implications about trading platinum to gold. So in the tax code, they do explicitly say that if you trade gold for silver or vice versa, that it is a taxable sale, and then you buy whatever next, right? But it doesn't say anything about gold versus platinum. And the reason that's interesting is that if it's not taxable, I hope to take some of my platinum to my family's home in Taiwan, where the commissions are a lot lower for making that trade. And of course, if you take more than $13,000 worth of precious metals across the border, you have to report it, which is what makes me really curious. If anybody has made a large trade of gold or platinum over the table, right, I want to know if how your tax experience was. If it is taxable and I have to do it under the table, then I'll have to do it in the United States, obviously. I traveled to Taiwan enough that I could probably bring a lot there without going over the 13,000 limit each trip. As an aside, I teach chemistry, and a lot of times kids seem, when I ask them what do you think the most stable metal is, everybody's going to answer gold, right? But to give you an idea of how silly that answer is, so if you mix hydrochloric acid, which is in toilet bowl cleaner, right, with nitric acid, which you might not be able to find in your everyday household chemicals, but it's not too hard to make in the home, right? You got fertilizers that are potassium nitrate, and you just got to add some acid. So I wouldn't be surprised if a combination of that would dissolve gold. And also, even hydrochloric acid with hydrogen peroxide would do the job, believe it or not. It's a little bit slower, and you got to heat it up. And neither of these are uncommon chemicals, right? And even the hydrochloric acid, I don't recommend mixing them, but with sodium hypochlorite, bleach, apparently will dissolve gold. I don't recommend doing that because it makes chlorine gas. And to give you an idea of another idea of just how unstable gold is, if you take, I can get the marker on here again. If you take salt water, let me see if I can get a better marker on here. Come on. Now, if you take salt water, right, which everybody has access to, right, and you take a battery and you connect the positive to the gold, believe it or not, apparently that gold will dissolve. I don't recommend trying this, though, because gold ions can be quite toxic, right, heavy metal poisoning. Not to mention, this might make some chlorine gas, although that's probably less of a worry. I'd be more worried about the gold ions. But this will dissolve gold. It won't for platinum. Maybe I'll do a video on making sodium chlorate using platinum electrodes, because that is possible. But apparently you can't use gold for this. And so I really find it a very significant buying opportunity to see platinum at half the price of gold, just knowing the chemistry of both of these elements, right? If it weren't for the historical accident that humans worked with gold first, I can't see a reason why why the fuck would you buy gold when you can buy platinum for half the price, right? If it weren't just for the accident of how humans discover these two elements.